Shabbat Shalom. This week's Parsha is named after its primary antagonist, Korach, who ignites a mutiny against Moses and Aaron by challenging their authority, stating, Chol ha'edah kulam kedoshim, uvtocham Adonai, umadua titnasu al kahal Adonai. All among the community are holy, all of us, and Adonai is in our midst. Why then do you, Moses and Aaron, raise yourselves above Adonai's congregation? Shocked, Moses sets up a showdown for the next day, with Korach and his followers on one side, Moses and Aaron on the other, each preparing offerings to God and awaiting God's response. In the morning, Korach rouses the community to watch, and once the offerings are made, God appears and threatens to wipe out the entire congregation of Israel. Moses and Aaron then beseech God to only punish the rebellious Korach and his followers. The story ends when the ground swallows up Korach and his disciples, taking them directly to the underworld. God intervenes twice in this tale, each time with violent intent that deserves our scrutiny. First, God administers capital punishment to Korach and his followers, an act which may be troubling for modern Jews. After all, Korach's argument seems reasonable enough. If the entire community is holy, why do Moses and Aaron get to sit atop the hierarchy? Couldn't there be a more equitable way to share authority among God's people? Maybe there is. But while Korach justifies his insurrection by suggesting that all Israelites should be held in equal regard, it's clear from his actions he doesn't intend to replace Moses and Aaron's leadership with some sort of democracy. Rather, he intends to supplant them. Korach initiates the challenge to their leadership. Korach participates in the showdown, and Korach gathers the whole community to witness his triumph. You see, Korach isn't upset because Moses and Aaron are in charge. He's upset because he isn't. And from this, we learn that it's far more important to watch what people do than to listen to what people say. Korach's rebellion isn't folded in the seductive words of equality and dignity, but his actions reveal that his intentions are anything but equitable, which is why, according to the sages, he suffers a gruesome demise. But even before God punishes Korach, God puzzlingly threatens to destroy the entire Israelite community. Even Moses and Aaron seem genuinely surprised by the scope of God's wrath. And so they ask God, Ha'ish echad yechateh va'al kol ha'edah tiktsov? When one man sins, should the entire community feel your wrath? Their entreaty supposes that God's anger is misplaced. But while God relents and allows Moses and Aaron to separate the Israelites from Korach before God's punishment arrives, God never acknowledges their dissent. Clearly, the community has sinned, even though in the moment, Moses and Aaron don't recognize it. And that's because the people's sin is one of omission. When Korach rouses the Israelites from their bed to witness his showdown with Moses and Aaron, no one speaks up. No one interjects. No one interferes. No one resists. And God, unlike Moses and Aaron, isn't content to allow the Israelites to simply sit out the struggle on the sidelines. God expects the Israelites to voice their support for Moses and Aaron, to disrupt Korach's cynical grab for power, to pursue justice. And since they fail to act, they, just like Korach, earn a place of infamy in this story. These two lessons that were best served by heeding people's actions rather than their words, and that we are not permitted to sit on the sidelines of injustice, are just as critical to our people today as they were for our ancestors, because they show us exactly how we must respond to the injustices around us, including the grave injustice of last week's Supreme Court ruling in Dobbs versus Jackson, and the subsequent torrent of opportunistic state legislation designed to restrict the freedoms of women. Some of you may disagree with that last statement, and I won't try to convince you otherwise. Instead, I can only refer you to statements published by our nation's major Jewish movements, Reform, Conservative, and yes, even Orthodox, which express their categorical opposition to the cascade of state anti-abortion legislation that bears little to no regard for the lives and welfare of American women. Some others among you might be thinking, I really don't want to talk about this on Shabbat. Guess what? I wish we weren't talking about this either. But let's be clear. We're not talking about politics. We're not. We're talking about Judaism. Because according to Jewish law, human life does not begin at conception. And while Jewish law mandates that the potential for life deserves our care, it also mandates that our obligation to potential for life should never supersede our responsibility to existing life, and that it should never prevent access to abortion care that would ensure the physical and mental well-being of a mother. Not the life of a mother, the well-being of a mother. Only a fundamentalist Christian theology believes that life begins at conception, which means that the anti-abortion legislation that we've seen in the past week represents an attack upon the free exercise of religion for Jews, for Muslims, for Buddhists, for Hindus, and countless more, including many Christians. Now, this can be difficult to remember because the political leaders of the anti-abortion movement, just like Korach, have clothed their crusade in the seductive prose of safeguarding life, even calling themselves pro-life. But as we learned from Korach, we have to look at people's actions, not their words, in order to determine their true intent. And what actions would we expect from a movement dedicated to safeguarding the lives of children? We might expect them to ensure the adoption of every one of the more than 100,000 children in our nation's foster care system, especially children of color who disproportionately remain in the system longer than white children. Because that's what you do when you care about the lives of children. We might expect them to eliminate homelessness for families, because that's what you do when you care about the lives of children. We might expect them to ensure that families have unfettered access to quality health care, preschool, diapers, formula, and childcare, because that's what you do when you care about the lives of children. We might expect them to expand access to birth control and sex education, to ensure that babies can be born to prepared and loving mothers, because that's what you do when you care about the lives of children. Now, to be certain, there are proponents of anti-abortion who also champion these causes. But there are countless more who show little to no concern for mothers, for families, even for children once they've already been born. For these people, a group that includes way too many religious leaders and elected representatives. Outlawing abortion isn't about saving lives at all. It's about votes. It's about control. It's about making Christian fundamentalism the law of our land. And maybe, more than anything, it's about putting women back in their place. And what place is that? In the state of Mississippi, there is a woman who will die because her state, in order to safeguard her fetus, forbids her from receiving necessary cancer treatments during pregnancy. This is a woman's place, according to the state of Mississippi. And this is what we as American Jews cannot allow. In the state of Texas, there is a woman who will die because she'll be forced to wait until it's too late to receive the proper care for her miscarriage, lest a potentially viable fetus be injured in the process. This is a woman's place in the state of Texas. And this is what we as American Jews cannot allow. In the state of Oklahoma, there is a 15-year-old woman who will be forced to give birth to her own sister because she's been sexually abused by her father since she was 9 years old. This is a woman's place, according to the state of Oklahoma. And this is what we cannot allow as American Jews. In the state of Kentucky, there is a woman who will die because her boyfriend will kill her upon learning that she's pregnant, since murder actually represents the highest cause of death for pregnant women in the United States. This is a woman's place, according to the state of Kentucky. And this is what we, as American Jews, cannot allow. And in so many states, they're all listed here, but I can't even read them all. There's a woman who could have been the next Mary Curie, or the next Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or the next Brandy Chastain, or the next Sheryl Sandberg, or the next anything, except now she won't, because she's no longer in control of her own body. She won't get to choose if she finishes high school, or if she goes off to college, or if she takes that impressive internship, or if she even follows her dreams. Because this is a woman's place in a misogynistic, fundamentalist, Christian-controlled America. And this is what we as American Jews cannot allow. Rather, we must speak up. We must interject. We must interfere. We must resist. Because if we don't, then the blood and the indignity of an entire nation of women will stain not only the perpetrators of these crimes, it'll stain us as well. Monday is our Independence Day. I know a lot of people don't quite feel like celebrating. In fact, I recently read a post online that said Independence Day had been canceled due to a shortage of independence. And I don't want to suggest that we shouldn't despair. There is cause for despair. But I also want to remind us that on July 4th, 1776, we didn't win our independence. We declared it. And then we fought like hell to make it happen. Now we have to do it again. And when we win our independence once more, then we'll be able to say, as Korach only promised in mockery, that no one in God's community has been lifted over another, and that all of us, men and women alike, enjoy the holiness and the liberty and the freedom that we all deserve. May this be the gift we give our nation. Shabbat Shalom.